Hey guys, this is one of the final 3 videos coming up that was shot with the Panasonic camcorder. Unfortunately, image quality is not where it should be. I apologize for that. All footage coming up next week and beyond will be shot with a new Sony camcorder.
What's going on YouTube? John and Tony out here with the e-flite Turbo Timber Evolution. This is provided to me graciously on behalf of Hangar 18 Hobbies in beautiful Cary, North Carolina. We are currently at Loch Lomond. All the other normal flying sites would be flying out on the water have been completely shut down today. Very unfortunate, but this is still a beautiful place to fly. I probably should do it here more often. At least we're in the shade and it's quite hot. So that kind of helps out a lot. So I'm going to be filming techniques for how to land and take off on water today. I'm also going to be showing you guys, well, just how to get the most out of this thing on water too, because it's more fun to fly with the center of pressure change that you're going to get from having these floats in the front. And they also act like lifting bodies too, so it changes the way the plane flies. So let's go ahead and get this thing in the water. One good way to do that is just to kind of huck it in there. With thrust reverse, which you should have the ability to use, makes it pretty easy to reposition the plane. So you can do a couple different things. You can do a straight hover takeoff using snap flaps to get the plane right up in the air. Or you can just use regular flaps, which is what you're going to do today. When you're on the water, one of the first things you need to do is remember to hold just a little bit of back pressure, kind of keep your floats dug into the water so that you can maneuver a bit better. Especially if it gets windy, you want to hold back pressure as you see the plane's floats kind of hitting the waves coming at it. Well, if those waves overlap the floats and start making the floats dig into the water, what'll end up happening is the nose of the plane will flip over and you'll be stuck upside down and you have to get a different plane out there. You'll have to go swim in the water to go get it. We know that all too well, Tony and I. So as you're taxiing, you're gonna kind of want to keep your ailerons pointed in such a way, like say if you start seeing like your right wing dip, give it some left aileron to keep it from flipping over in the water or touching. Same thing happens before. We're flying with wind, so it's gonna be a little more challenging. Hold some stick pressure till it gets on step and just add a little bit more and it lifts right out of the water.
Flaps up.
Pretty simple stuff, really. It turns the plane into kind of like a tricycle lander, even though it's a normal tail dragger config. We can also do this with Crow too, but it'll be safer to land without it, probably. We'll see. Keep some throttle on the approach. Settle it in nice and good.
Flaps
back to takeoff flaps, lift right up.
Flaps up.
The objective when you're flying with floats is really to avoid letting the front of the floats dig into the surface of the water. If that happens, it will flip over. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Tony and I have both seen this, and he's actually had to swim out and get one. And I have also had to wade in deep water to get a timber back more than once. I've also had my maul flip over because it was nose heavy and it just wanted to dig into the water. On the waves just made it flip.
Full flaps.
Okay, level the wings out as the flaps come in. Add some throttle, level out. That's a bad one, but I salvaged it.
50.
Spent too much time talking, not enough time flying. There we go. Let's get back into the pattern here. We'll do this a few more times so you guys get an idea of what to do. Again, the most common pitfall is that you're going to let the floats dig into the water, and that'll be when you have an issue.
Flaps up.
There is something therapeutic about flying in circles, landing repeatedly, especially if you can continue perfecting your landings. Like that last one was pretty good, objectively, I think. Drop the flaps, a little bit of rudder to kick the nose around, level the wings out, control the descent with a little bit of throttle and some elevator pressure.
Flaps up.
Flaps are on like a 3 or 4 second timer, so by the time I lift out of the water, they've already come close to retracting into takeoff position. Dropping the flaps. Normally I don't drop flaps until I level the wings, but because we're using rudder, we should be okay. A little bit of turbulence there and a little bit of over control on my part. Do this about 3 more times. The wind is kind of making this challenging, which is actually making it more fun. Worst case scenario, I have other planes I can go out there and push this back to shore with. All right, here we go. Level the wings out. A little bit more throttle.
Flaps up.
Check our voltage.
15.4 volts.
Plenty of power left. That's like halfway, half throttle too. Drop flaps. A little bit less rough on the rudder this time. There we go. Hold our glide slope. Do it one more time and get it right. Some of this is wind, most of it is me messing up. But again, you guys can learn from my mistakes, see what I'm doing wrong, and you can see how to fix that. It would have been to hold more throttle on the approach.
Full flaps.
A little bit more throttle coming into the bank so we don't stall.
15.7
Keep a little bit more throttle
volts.
here. There's the shear. Counter that.
Flaps up.
Get that one more time. We're gonna make it land perfectly for you guys, like we did a few minutes ago. And then we'll get into some more aerobatic flying with it.
Full flaps.
Okay, got a little bit of a crosswind developing with the plane windmill into it. Just a little bit. There we go.
Flaps up.
Okay, let's get into
Full snap flaps.
Harriers and hovers.
15.4 volts. Wing normal.
Plane's pretty stable in hover. Honestly, it's a better hovering plane than some of my 3D planes are. Running out of battery power, so we're gonna have to just
15.1 volts.
go back and do that again, nice and low level.
Snap flaps.
Well, that's way too high level to be low level, isn't it?
Wing for 5 minutes.
See, it's getting affected by air currents up there. The plane is still susceptible to turbulence up here, even though it's in a hover. Modulate throttle to let it start dropping. All right, it's getting sketchy. Let's go ahead and get out.
14.4 volts.
See if we can get it to finally do some cool stuff like knife edge spins for real this time. It should theoretically do this way better
High.
on floats.
3D.
Which it just did.
G-force 4.8.
That was a cool G-force warning. G-force 4.8.
14.6 volts.
Whoa. That right there is exactly what happened to Tony when the plane went into the drink and we had to swim out and get it. I identified it starting to stall and knife edge, and then just throttled out of it and let go of the elevator or the rudder so it would stop doing that. It was on a windy day too, I think, when that happened. Hopefully he's be able to keep up with this. But yeah, that's one of those things when you're doing knife edges too, be careful.
Snap flaps. Wing normal.
Because it is very probable that you can stall it out in knife edge and end up, well, swimming out to get it or using one of your planes to push it back to shore. All right, we've had our fun for the time being. We'll bring it back in a little bit. Let's go ahead and toss in
Full flaps.
landing flaps, get her leveled out for approach. Very strong headwind is developing.
Volts. Flaps up.
Almost no runway used for that water landing. A lot of headwind, like I said. This plane can crawl through the sky with enough headwind. A little bit of elevator pressure until we get her close to shore, and let her just kind of walk or float back over here.
Thrust reversed. Engine throttle cut.
All right, come here, you. All right, we got her. Good stuff so far. Hopefully that helped you guys out. Mistakes and all. Again, flying for Hangar 18 Hobbies in beautiful Cary, North Carolina.
Wing normal.
Now, because I'm not terrified of it, doesn't mean I don't make stupid mistakes, like leaving the snap flaps on a little too
20
long.
seconds.
I used to never be able to do this, and I want to tell you guys, if I can do this, so can you. Just watch my hands.
30 seconds.
Some of the little bit of wind out there and a little bit of me screwing up is causing this. Mostly me screwing up.
Full flaps.
Bring her right back in, do some more hovering.
Flaps up.
I want to change that elevator out for the Night Timber X elevator. That was a crazy torque roll. Plane should not spin that fast.
One minute. Snap flaps.
There we go.
Wing normal.
Yeah, I used to nope out of this every single time. Tony could tell you how many times I did that. I used to get freaked out by this and I would just stop. But once you force yourself to get used to it is when you start really growing as a pilot. And you stop letting anxiety rule you. You just remember what direction is what, and then you compensate for it, and then you get yourself to hover over the water like that. And you got a 50-50 chance of landing on the floats anyway, so what's the worst that could happen? Get these sweet torque rolls going. And you can see the wind is actually having an effect, so it's not just me BSing you guys and saying, oh, it's the wind. I suck, but it's the wind. Now, sometimes when you get into a torque roll like that, the plane should be turning to the left, but it starts rotating to the right. That's those giant ironing boards for wings counteracting the torque of the motor. So now we're getting it back into stabilization here. I mean, look at how good this is. It's not bad at all. Back into torque rolling. Torque rolling with floats is a little bit harder. Go ahead and get out of it.
Flaps.
Using snap flaps and a little bit of thrust, you can make that thing come right over. Look at it go. Probably the best hover combo I've ever done in this model. A little bit of rudder to get her away from us. Safety is paramount, of course. We don't want to hurt the cameraman, we don't want to hurt myself, and we don't want to run into the traffic out there on Lockmere Drive.
$14.7 volts.
Let's get back into a quick hover and see if we can Harrier to landing.
Full snap flaps. Wing normal.
There we go. Harrier landing. Hover landing. Same thing. All right, guys, we're back with the Turbo Timber from Horizon Hobbies e-flite line, flying for Hangar 18 Hobbies in beautiful Cary, North Carolina. We're going to do some more landing practice now that the wind has finally started to die down. Takeoff and landings again, so you guys can see how this is all done. If you're struggling with this, you'll get over it. Don't worry. A little bit of thrust goes a long way. Let the plane get on step. Step being the flat part of the float in the back. As it gets more speed, it will gently allow you to pull it into the air.
Flaps up.
There we go.
30 seconds.
I have crow in this plane too if I needed it, but we can do this without crow.
Full flaps.
Full flaps coming in, using the rudder, kind of level the wings out, slip the plane in. There we go. One wheel almost, or one float almost. There we go. It's really all just about coordination. Like, you know, when you go to give it flaps, you can use the rudder to turn and keep the wings mostly level. A little bit of opposite aileron kind of helps with that. Lets you slip it in.
1 minute.
Once you lose the slip angle, as you let go of the rudder, keep the thrust on. That way you can just almost drop the wing into the water. That way you can actually, you know, lift up and land gracefully. It's not that hard, but you know, wind does become a factor. If you are in a place that's kind of prone to wind shear, you start seeing the model drop, just be Johnny on the spot with that throttle. All you got to do is throttle out of wind shear. If the plane starts dropping, you'll know it's wind shear. If it starts dropping like 5 to 10 feet at a time, sometimes 20, depending on how severe the shear is. A little bit of slip, here we go. Level the wings out, hold the plane level as we come closer to the water.
Flaps up.
Again, not every flight has to be absolutely 100% perfect, but the technique is there. You guys can see how to do this. This is on a 3200 Smart Pack 50C. You can do this with lighter weight batteries too, although the extra weight does help the wings cut through the air a little bit better.
Flaps up.
Now we're flying into a headwind, of course, which is kind of making it a little bit more tricky. You can also do this without flaps. The plane will glide more. It'll also be more susceptible to tipping over, because if you're not holding some back pressure in the elevator and a wave catches the snoot of the floats, well, it's gonna dig in and it's gonna flip over. So that's why you gotta give it a little bit of a flare. That way you land on the steps first. That'll really help keep you from running into that catch the float issue and flip it upside down. Most of the time the water doesn't damage it unless it's salt water, in which case you got real problems. Couple of bounces there, here we go.
16.1 volts.
Still plenty of power here, 16.1 volts, and that's half throttle.
Full flaps.
A little bit of slip to get her around. There we go.
3 minutes.
One
Flaps
float
up.
landing and then it leveled out. So if you guys are seeing like this, if you're afraid of flying in wind, don't be like, just give it, be cognizant of it. If the waves are too big, like they're gonna overlap the floats, definitely don't fly in that kind of stuff. This is more than gentle enough to land and take off in, as you can see. You can always flare a little bit more to keep the floats out of the way. That doesn't hurt either. We'll do this one more time and then we'll
Full flaps.
level out and move on to some other stuff, like maybe some more hovering.
Flaps up. Snap flaps.
So you can also do the snap flap takeoff. I'm preferable to that. I actually love taking straight off into a wind like that.
15.4 volts.
And again, don't be afraid of this. Like, the worst that's gonna happen is the plane flips over and I just gotta take the carbon cub out there and push it back to shore.
4 minutes.
I almost had it flip there, but I remembered I needed to use right rudder to correct for that. So really not a big deal.
Flaps.
Come back into the landing practice again. It's a little harder to do hovering with the 3200 pack.
Flap, snap flaps. 15.3 volts.
And then it flips, just like that. So what we can do now that you guys are actually seeing what happens here, we can go ahead and just leave this plane running. It's not gonna be damaged at all. What we're gonna do is we're gonna stay on camera. I'm gonna switch to the carbon Z-Cub. We're gonna go out and push it back to shore. This kind of stuff happens, guys, especially if you're hot dogging in the wind. None of that would have happened if I hadn't tried hovering in it. The plane is not damaged, not even slightly. It's still running. Like I could, if I was still connected to it right now, it would still be working just fine. Right now, we're gonna go ahead and, so you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm speed running, getting this plane put together. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to work. Plop this battery compartment in there. We're not gonna fly it, we're just gonna use it as a tug of sorts. There we go. And then we're gonna go out there and we're just gonna push it back to shore. As soon as it initializes, we'll be good to go.
Throttle cut.
So this happens to everybody when you fly from water. It's totally normal. It should be expected. If you get your heart like hurt about this, like if you get upset about this, don't. Like it happens to me and I fly off the water more in a week than some people do in an entire year.
Throttle open.
So it happens to everyone, right? So the easiest way to do this is to have another plane with reverse thrust, like this carbon Z-Cub.
Nav light cycle. 0.25 nav light cycle.
There we go. This will make it so much easier to get back. We're gonna just back the plane up into it and push it to shore.
Thrust reversed. 20
A
seconds.
little bit of thrust goes a long way. We don't want to damage the timber.
Engine normal.
This is actually an
reversed.
ideal plane to do this with too, because it's less susceptible to wind being heavier.
30 seconds.
Got a good grip on it now. Should be able to start pushing it back to
25.2
shore.
volts. Engine normal.
Should have her any second now.
Thrust reversed.
There we go. Just gotta let it dry out and it should be good to go.
Normal.
There we are. Now, the fun part's gonna be getting the plane back without damaging anything or hurting myself.
Thrust reversed. Engine full. Throttle cut.
Put this down over here, and then
25 volts.
worst case scenario, again, all I gotta do is just dry it out. It's not that big of a deal. The plane is still fully functional. You can see the ailerons and the rudder and everything else is still correcting. So if we just let it sit there and dry out, it will be totally fine. So we'll go ahead and end it here on this unfortunate incident that does happen to everybody, including me. Don't beat yourselves up over it. If it does happen, it's gonna happen to you at some point. You are gonna flip it over. There's nothing you can do about it. Everybody makes mistakes. And if you beat yourself up over that kind of stuff, you're gonna find that you never get into the hobby and have fun. Thanks again for watching, guys. See you again out there.